Alright, what you're looking at here is first cabinet. I didn't actually show the process of building it because I don't think it's necessary. You can see everything here. This is going above the window above the bed on the passenger side. You're looking at it from the rear so you can actually see all the build. We've used 18mm Baltic birch plywood. I wanted to use good quality plywood for holding screw power and all that. One of the things that we have learnt that we wish we'd learned a little bit earlier about the marine grade plywood is it doesn't have anywhere near as much holding power. So if you're planning on screwing some stuff into, say, the marine grade, you need to put some good quality plywood behind it as a source to put your screws in. But anyway, we've got a door and a door. I've used right angle aluminum with number 6 screws and number 6 stainless steel washers. There's many different ways you could do this. You could do it with the Craig system. You could do it, I suppose, with using wood and glue and nailing. I didn't want to screw into the end grain or anything, so I just decided I already had the system down from the rest of the build of doing this aluminum and drilling holes in it. I don't know, that's just how I decided to do it. So we've got 2 doors. This will go up against the window like that. This is 3 screws, 3 mounting to get it initially mounted on the wall. You can see the profile at the end there. This is actually how it'll go in the van, with the van facing that way. So this is going up against the wall. You can see that there's a bit of a profile for the shape of our roof. Actually, the ceiling has a slight curvature to it, so that's why this is going downhill. The notch is for little metal at the back. So this is our profile. What I did at the front here was I used 1.5 inch poplar, which is a hardwood. But I used 1.5 inch poplar. So now you got to see what you're going to see from the inside of the van. So this is poplar. So poplar frames the front of it. So A, it tidies up the look of the plywood, and it has a lot nicer look to it. And I had to angle the top here to match the angle of the roof or ceiling, and we had to cut out this little notch because where the seams are in the ceiling panels, we got that 6mm plywood that goes down the middle of the seam. So obviously there's a seam here and cut it out. We already have a stainless steel industrial look with screws and a combination of some black fittings in different places, so we're maintaining that industrial look and maintaining that black / stainless steel fitting look. I use these chest hinges because they lock, they actually latch in place, and I wanted this to be able to lower to go down so that when you're in the van it just falls down and you can get and do whatever you want. So I figured that was the best way for us, so I had to put a little edge in here that it comes up against. And the other thing too is these chest hinges are really meant to go down, so I just took the little tab that was there and bent it back so that otherwise it would have prevented the door from shutting. There's a little tab that normally goes in there, but I just do that and I think it fits in and goes with our current theme. So right now we're about to fit this up, get it in place. I'll just turn it around for you so you can see the profile again. The back again. That's our attempt at making the first cabinet. Alright, we're making the smaller cabinet for the driver's side above the bed window. Now, it's basically the same principle that we made the other cabinet with, except because of headroom and we've decided that our heads are going to be on the driver's side. So we're making this cabinet shorter, like it doesn't come down as far, and a little bit skinnier, but both cabinets started the same way. I had this piece of scrap plywood that I made a template that got me close to the profile of the ceiling and got the notch to go around where the steelwork is at the back and pretty well line up with the ceiling. And then I marked the height of my cabinet that I wanted it. So on our bigger cabinet, this was the height. On the new, and this was the width. On the new, above the driver's side, we're coming up about 3 inches, but we also made it less wide. This one is 9 3/4 wide, the original cabinet, and the new one's 7 1/4. And it's mainly so that we don't bump our heads and take stuff out when we're getting up that side of the head. And we're using 3/4 Baltic birch plywood for the cabinets, and we're using aluminum. That's just the way I prefer to do it for the joints, where the wood meet. So basically, this is the beginning of the driver's side above the bed window cabinet. So we've got the cutouts I told you about with the roof line. This is the front of the cabinet. This is going against the wall. Right now this thing measures 38 inches total width. We've got the outside. The outsides actually go down flush with the bottom of this one. So this one is cut 3/4 shorter because it's sitting on top. And right now all I've done is set it up with my right angles, and you have to check later because they can move until you get reinforced. So later on you will have to check just your angles, but what we're trying to do now is, so this is the framework for the cabinet, and then we put poplar across the front. Now if you notice there's a 10-degree angle here. That's the angle on my roof if it follows the pattern of the cross beams and everything. So I've cut this the same so that the 10-degree follows, and right now we're about to screw those on the outside here. But before I can do that, I'm using 1 inch by 1 inch aluminum 1/16 for these bigger ones, and for other little sections where the poplar is going to go, I got this smaller right angle which is 3/4 by 1/2 inch by 1/16. So it's 1/16, and we've pretty well followed this whole procedure throughout the build. And it's pretty well just getting a piece of scrap wood now, and we have this little jig that helps us with making sure the holes are all the same distance away. So we basically just put this jig in here and we start to drill our holes, and we're using number 6 stainless steel self-tapping screws to go into the wood. But so now I'm going to drill out these little brackets, and then we'll start putting the poplar front on it. And that's where we're going to go. You've already seen us drill out the brackets and how I make them. So this is kind of our drilled bracket. You'll see that the smaller ones are slightly offset from the other holes, and I'll just take this oversized drill and I'll just deburr all the edges on the side that's going to screw into the wood, so it goes nice and flush with the wood. So now it's ready to, there's my custom little bracket for my piece of poplar. I've got to make 3 more of these. Alright, 56 screws later and some aluminum brackets. We're getting down to the end of this other cabinet. It's kind of what it looks like right now. We've got this final centerpiece to put in. Just so you know, when I turn it around, so you can see everything is 18mm Baltic birch plywood, and then all the front here is poplar. And I'm about to put this piece here in, You need to make sure you're square, so that when you make the doors they're squared. It could kind of angle a little bit. And B, you also need to make sure you're in the center of your upright. And third, everything's an 1.5 inches here, poplar. But this piece here, I've cut from a 5-inch piece that's actually 2-inch wide. Because 1.5 inches wouldn't be wide enough to be both sides of the plywood and even, so this particular centerpiece is 2 inches wide. We're going to square everything up now and screw that in. So that's where we're at. Alright, this thing's actually ready to hang. The only thing that's missing is the brackets that we're going to hang it to the wall with. So the next step is I'm going to lacquer this part before I make the doors. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take an orbital sander. I'm going to run it over all the surfaces. And more importantly, on the outer edges, I'm going to round those. And I'll try and round the corner so as to not have a sharp corner that'll ding your head or whatever. So I'm going to spend a bit of time rounding this edge and this edge. I'm going to leave the top because that's against the ceiling. And just run it across the surface, lacquer it, then we make the doors. Alright, we're here in the morning. It's we came back with a fresh look to finish this cabinet. I gave it a light sand this morning with 600 sandpaper, which is a fairly non-aggressive sandpaper. Just to get any roughness from the 2 coats of lacquer yesterday, clear lacquer. And we're just using a semi-gloss. And then after that I gave it a third and final coat of clear lacquer. So this cabinet is pretty well ready to be hung up. Just to give you an idea of measurements, right now it measures just shy of 38 inches in length. And at the height at the front, it's about 11.5, and at the back, it's about 10. So you can see that from the front being 11.5 up, and the back being 10, that there's quite a bit of slant on the roof if you follow the natural slant. We've just cut 2 doors, and we're about to, they're not lacquered yet. So what I've done with the doors, inevitably with wood, there's always a good side and a bad side. Especially when you're working with fairly primitive setup like we are, not a professional woodworking shop or anything, just the tools we have, the quality of the blades we have. So I always try when I do my saw cuts and stuff to have everything the same, so if there's going to be tear out or anything, it's on the same side on the back. So that's the case here. This is the slightly bad side with a little bit of tear out at the back. And this is the good side. So that's the side we'll be facing out when we do it. I've taken my orbital sander with 300 paper on it, and I've chamfered all the corners just to remove the sharp edges and stop accidental peeling if you rub across it with your hand or anything. So they've all been slightly chamfered, and I've also chamfered across the corners a little bit. Not a lot, but just enough to take that super sharp edge off. So we're about to give these 3 coats of lacquer, and then we're going to set up the hinges, the latch, and the little stop that needs to be put on here. I don't know if I mentioned it yesterday, but this little cutout that we've put in here is for the seam where the ceiling panels meet, and we have an overlaying piece of 6mm plywood, so that's what that's supposed to be for. And we'll show you as we finish fitting all the doors and everything up, and we're about to hang it, but we're just about half an hour or so away from hanging this thing up. And just on a note, the reason this one is so much smaller than the other one that we built, mainly in height, is because we've decided to have a head end and a foot end on the van. And with this being on the head end side of things, we wanted to keep it up fairly high and fairly shallow, so that if we do sit up or do lean up in the bed or we do move around, we don't get a bad headache bumping our head against a fairly solid 3/4 inch poplar and cabinet grade cabinet. So that's the purpose of this being smaller, but it's still a decent storage. It's better than having none. So that's why this side is smaller, purely for headroom clearance. Alright, we got the doors lacquered. Originally we cut the doors, we cut them 2/16 smaller than the measurement of the opening. That leaves about 1/16 all the way around. I've lined them up in the hole, and then we've just got some black metal hinges to go with our current theme, black and chrome, and with most of the hardware exposed because that's the look we're going for. I've set them on here. What I do is I make the pin part of the hinge go right down the middle of the gap between the door and the frame, and that's how I line them up. Make sure you do the same measurements from the outside, or consistent measuring so it looks symmetrical. Also make sure you try to keep the same measurements to the other cupboard that we had, so that looking left and right they look symmetrical. So try and take a little bit of consideration into your workmanship. And we got a 564 drill. That's what we're using. We're pilot drilling all our holes, so that gives a start for the screw. And this is we're using a 564 for number 6 self-tapping screw, and it also helps to stop the wood from splitting. So we're just gonna, I've marked them with a pencil already. We're just gonna do a pilot hole for each screw dead center of my circles. Alright, let's screw the hinges on and we're good to go. Alright, we're about to put the latch on. I'm just finding the center of the door. Now I'm using these chest latches from Home Depot Everbuilt. They're not really meant for this situation. They're more meant for the door opening and closing like this, and we're going to be opening and closing like that. So this little tab that's here is in the way of that happening because it would hit the gap. So I like the look of these latches. They look very cute to me. They look awesome. So what I'm doing is just bending that little tab back in on itself so that I can use them. The other thing I like about them is the way they lock and hold the door in place. And the clamp here right now is just to hold the door from flapping down because I haven't put the backstop on it yet, so I'm just holding the door in place. But so the first thing I'm going to do is bend the tab back and then screw this on. The last piece of this cabinet puzzle, for the way we're doing it, is we've got to put a backstop. Right now there's no backstop, so the door can go anywhere. So we need to make a backstop. Alright, so the way that we're going to do that is put this in behind, and this was one that hasn't been touched yet. I've just rounded the bottom corners so they're not pointing when you stick your hands in, and I've drilled 2 holes, and that's now going to go in behind here. Alright, we're putting the last thing to go on this cabinet is the end stop for the second door. Then we're going to hang the cabinet. Alright, so this is the final cabinet ready for hanging. We've got our 2 doors here, they flip down. All up, I think it was just about a full day's work. We did start on this yesterday, but we also finished off the other cabinet yesterday, so I'd say there was almost like a full day's work in getting this one done.